everybody hear me? Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming to the talk. Thanks to Giant for inviting me to talk at this meeting. Today, I'd like to talk about using the power of AI in data and analytics and building a community to discover the potential of real-world data, or realizing the potential of real-world data more accurately. The power and promise of real-world data has been talked about for a long time in our industry, but I feel like we are just now at a kind of confluence point where we have the technical tools and capability to utilize, access that data and analyze that data in a meaningful way to add value to the clinical decision-making process. I'm old enough, despite appearances, to have lived through the human genome when that was discovered and published. And at the time, in 2000, there was a lot of talk about personalized medicine, being able to identify biomarkers from the genome, as if it was just around the corner. And we're now in 2021, and we now have personalized medicine. We have ability to rapidly characterize viruses, the COVID virus. But that's only possible because of the confluence of the technology and the data handling and the management of that data catching up with the promise of the original discovery. And that's where we are with real-world data at the moment. But there are still huge challenges. The industry is recognizing the value and power of this data, and they are investing in AI in healthcare with a huge market predicted by 2024. And the regulators are also encouraging it. Both the FDA and the EMEA will accept real-world data-based submissions, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Companies really want to invest in this technology. 81% in this KPMG survey suggested they would. And I don't know if this statistic is impressive or alarming. 67% want to do it ethically. So 33%, maybe not so much. We'll see. There are huge challenges, though. Anybody that works with real-world data sets, particularly large ones, understands this. We have real problems with interoperability of data, not just within countries, between countries, but within countries as well, where different hospital systems, and this is particularly true of the UK market, have their own setups for patient data capture. They recognize different data sets in different ways, and this is complex information. This isn't just structured data and information, so like medication lists. This is unstructured data, which is hospital notes, doctor's notes. And anybody that's worked with doctors directly, as I did earlier in my career, will know that doctors' writing is totally illegible. So this is the ultimate test of AI. There is also a lack of a common data model and limited data standardization. Again, not just between countries, but within countries. So we really need a new model. At Sensyne Health, we're acutely aware of these challenges, and we're working hard to overcome them. One of the areas that we focused on in this space is the synthetic control arm, synthetic trial control arm. This is still a relatively new approach in clinical trials. It is mandated now by the FDA and the EMEA for certain circumstances, notably rare and orphan populations, or studies where it's unethical to have a placebo control. Synthetic control arms are basically the use of a historic comparative arm of patients or real-world data that is constructed from the data to match the clinical trial experimental arm and act as a proxy control arm. And these are being accepted by the FDA and the EMEA. There have been something like 7 drugs approved with a synthetic control arm to date. So when it's done well, it's incredibly powerful. There are obviously benefits to using this approach for the pharmaceutical industry, not least reduction of trial costs and also trial recruitment time, because you're not having to recruit your patients in the traditional manner, going out to hospital sites, engaging with investigators, paying them, trying to recruit the patients. You have them there, the data's analyzed, it's available to you. More importantly, from our perspective at least, this can be a much more ethical process, particularly in rare and orphan diseases where patients don't have the number of treatment options available to them that you might have in broader conditions, and also reduces patient burden. You're not expecting or asking patients to participate in a clinical trial where they will not receive a potentially therapeutically beneficial treatment. We have built our own synthetic control arms for the industry. We're one of the few companies that have actually successfully managed this. I've got an example up here for you, which is in multiple myeloma, to give you an illustration of a couple of things, right? First of all, you need good breadth of data. You need to have access to large patient populations, ideally large diversified patient populations, in order to generate the number of patients needed. This is how many patients we started with in the synthetic control arm study, 1,214. If you start to apply the inclusion-exclusion criteria from the study protocol to these, you quickly see the patient numbers drop very drastically. So you're now down to, after all of the inclusion-exclusion criteria, you're down to 83 patients. What this points to is not just breadth of data, you need depth of data. You need to be able to identify and apply all of the inclusion-exclusion criteria to your patient population in order to reach a sufficient number at the end to form a decent cohort. The other point to notice here is that you'll see in one of the inclusion criteria, functional status, the ECOG score. This is very common in oncology clinical trials. It is unfortunately not very common in normal clinical practice. So having the depth of data where you can actually build proxy ECOG scores is also essential. So there are very few companies out there with access to the depth of data that Sensyne Health has in a way that is organized in order to be able to do this analysis successfully. Here you have the results of the synthetic control arm in terms of a Kaplan-Meier curve. So this is a standard oncology outcome measure in clinical trials in oncology, where you're looking at basically survival over time. Here you have the black line is the actual clinical trial group, and the blue line is the synthetic control arm. And then you've got actually the actual treatment control arm from the study. And what you'll see is that at 12 months follow-up, the control arms, actually the synthetic control arm we've built and the actual experimental control arm do agree very closely, which is impressive and indicative that actually a synthetic control arm in our hands with our analysis is possible. Because we've done this already with clients, this is a very labor-intensive process. It can take a long time to get the data out of the hospitals, to analyze the data in a controlled environment, and then produce the results. Because of this, and because our clients have asked for it, we have produced a new platform called the Sensyne platform. This is an analytical tool set, a window, if you will, into our data, giving the access to the analytical tools to be able to automate or semi-automate the synthetic control arm process. Because we built this from our data sets, we have something like 10 million patient data sets within the platform by the end of this year. We currently have access to over 20 million patient data sets in the US healthcare system market and the NHS. By 2024, we're aiming for 100 million patient data sets in the platform, which will truly be powerful. The other thing that we want to do with the platform is bring together a global community of clinicians, academicians, and the pharmaceutical industry. To that end, we are making the platform available to all of these groups, and the platform will have a communications tool built into it, so people that have concurrent research interests can communicate, discuss, share data, share ideas, which again will be hugely powerful. How do we do this? So the crucial thing that we have is the common data model that we have built from scratch. This is a unique common data model. It is actually compatible with OMOPS, which is like an industry standard. And what we can do is we can pull in all of the data sets we have access to, oncology data, pathology, imaging, pharmacy, across all of the electronic patient records, including unstructured data around notes. And all of this gets pulled into a common data model so we can then analyze that data. It's really important to note that this data is aggregated and anonymized. So no patient data ever leaves Sensyne Health's premises or is made available to third parties. So what can we do with the Sensyne platform? So basically, having access to such a large data set and such a rich, deep data set is incredibly powerful for a number of indications across the industry, ranging from drug discovery and development all the way through to commercialization. I talked about synthetic control arms. They're in the clinical end of the spectrum. There's also the ability to do patient stratification, where you're building enriched patient data cohorts into your clinical trials to validate your clinical trial design and to ensure that you're actually treating the right patient population. For target identification, you need access to what I call the holy trinity of data. So rich phenotypic data, image analysis data, and matching genomic data. And we have some data partners that have access to those data sets in the platform. And then on the commercial side, comparative real-world data comparison, real-world evidence generation, and outcomes tracking applied to things like HTA analysis. So it's a very broad sweep of opportunities here. So pulling all of this together, we believe that the Sensyne platform is a tool, together with our huge data access and ability to analyze that data, and the community we're building across life sciences, pharma, and the academic institution to help realize the promise of real-world data in the pharmaceutical and healthcare settings. Thank you very much. Any questions? I'm also open for bar mitzvahs, weddings, funerals. Thank you very much.